Hello and welcome everyone, we Weeb online, and today I'm gonna start a new movie, What If Naruto Became an Evil Weapon. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Azula saw as the lightning strike traveled through her arm and ejected from the tips of her fingers. It buzzed in the air as it moved. If it struck, no. When that lightning strike made contact with its intended target, Ba Sing Se would be destroyed, and that would bring her one step nearer to her objectives. Poor Ong, as he slumped back to the ground unconscious, didn't even know what hit him. Clearly, the bolt burned both his front and back after tearing through his shoulder. As Katara sprinted to save her friend's falling body, she yelled, "Ong, no." It's a good thing Sokka was directly below Ong, or otherwise he might have fallen and died. He yelled to his sister as soon as Ong was secure in his arms. They both started running after saying, "We need to leave this place immediately." But not before Katara gave Azula a deadly gaze. Ty Lee arrived with Mai and a battalion of Fire Nation warriors and inquired, "Should we go after them?" Azula simply grinned as she pointed to where the group vanished before stating, Azula was beaming, "Don't worry, they won't get far. Moreover, with the Avatar wounded, they won't stand a chance against any of us anymore." She could hardly have had a better day. Aside from witnessing her father torture and burn her brother, it was near enough. As Azula turned to depart, a soldier shouted for everyone's attention, "Your Highness, I believe I've discovered something." "What's that?" The princess had this thought as she stared at some sort of metal door. Her most recent attack seemed to have gone straight through the wall, causing a portion of it to collapse and exposing the secret door underneath. The door was enormous. She has never seen anything like it, not even at the royal castle. The metal door was embellished with images from a long ago fight and descriptions that were too faded to read. However, some of the description was still legible, and as Azula read it, it gave her the willies. The words were too worn out to read until the last paragraph after the 12-year conflict between Avatar Kior. The demon known as Unknown Evil is dormant beyond this door. May the ghosts preserve it here for all time. Azula was feeling conflicted at the time. Her primal urges were begging her to simply turn around and leave. Or, even better, burn the door so that nothing ever again can open it. However, she could hear a voice in her head assuring her it was okay to glance inside. She had no idea if the earthbenders were using it as a ruse to conceal a priceless artifact. One quick glance wouldn't do any harm, right? I was thinking as Azula once again examined the image on the door. The carving showed a darkness with red eyes engulfing the entire globe. You could see individuals scurrying away in fright at the bottom. She took a breath before opening the enormous door. Surprisingly, it was almost weightless, and Azula only needed to give it a slight push for it to fully swing open. The door slammed into the opposite side's walls with a loud bang. A surge of chilly wind raced across the entire cave as soon as the screams subsided, blowing out a few torches in the process. Ty Lee questioned Zola, "What did you do from the opposite side of the big cave?" She and Mai walked cautiously up to the door with the other soldiers, keeping an eye out for any potential traps. Azula, however, paid no attention to anyone as she boldly entered the dimly lit space. In reality, the door led to a spiral staircase that descended and finished in a spacious room with a dome-shaped ceiling. She observed that a sizable rock cube with metal rods running through it stood in the center of the room. The cube was covered in a waterfall from the roof, and a ring of fire encircled it. Amazingly, the fire and the water didn't appear to put each other out. Azula saw the room was filled with a cool breeze that seemed to originate from nowhere in particular. The others were behind her as she gingerly made her way toward the cube. Azula felt pulled to this item for reasons she could not explain. She needed to touch it. Her mind was urging her. The four elements that surrounding the cube appeared to move away from her as she drew nearer, ensuring her safety. One of the guards said, "Your Highness, it is not safe for you to go near that creature." They were terrified of her. Yes, but they were more afraid of what would happen to them if the Fire Lord learned what had happened to his beloved child. If she were harmed or worse, dead. Azula snapped as she turned to face the soldiers. "When I want your opinion, I'll ask for it." After that, they instantly stopped talking. She cautiously positioned a palm on the cube as she spun around once more, and almost immediately, all the metal rods blasted back inside. Azula was obviously surprised by this and retreated cautiously. The cube started to crumble very gradually. They started out seeming as thin as hair, but as the seconds passed, they continued to get larger and eventually, pieces of the cube began to come off. However, just the face that was in front of the princess disintegrated. The rest of the cube remained intact. She was nonetheless surprised by what was lying inside. Inside the cube was a boy who was presumably no older than 19 and was chained. His entire body was covered in dozens of paper slips that were stuck to it. Even though his hands were bound with chains, they had anguishably protruding metal and wood rods. He was wearing a blindfold that had the same markings as the paper slips over his eyes. The same treatment was given to his arms and legs. Actually, all that was visible was his golden hair. It stretched across the middle of his back and was long and spiky. He had pale, almost transparent skin. You may think it was simply another corpse if it weren't for the fact that it wasn't decaying. But the fact that he was still breathing indicated that he was not yet dead. Everyone stared in awe at the scene. Was this a prison of some sort? This degree of brutality was unknown among the Earthbenders. On the battlefield, they were undoubtedly fierce fighters, but they still showed mercy. Azula reached out to touch the chains, but as soon as their skin connected, she collapsed to the ground. She struggled for air as she felt herself losing all of her energy. My and Tylee yelled Azula as they sprinted to save their fallen pal. What occurred? I felt as though all of my energy was taken out of me the moment I touched the chains. The sounds of shackles shattering and crashing to the ground caused everyone to hold their breath. They all observed the body rise gradually from its kneeling position. The ropes encircling its limbs and body snapped easily, falling to the ground casually. On his face, the blindfold appeared to burn off and float away. The youngster slowly opened his eyes, revealing blood-red irises and slits for pupils. Everyone watched with bated breath. He held up both hands to display his clawed hands. Even Azula's nails couldn't compare to the sharpness of his. The child suddenly grinned, flashing his longer-than-average teeth. He took a deep breath and looked about at the people. "How long has it been?" he started, but his voice was hoarse from not being able to use it for a long time. A millennia, or was it longer than that? The temperature in the room suddenly fell enough for Azula to feel her breath. "Are you friends or enemies?" Tylee said, placatingly lifting both hands. "We wish you no harm." Soon the temperature was back to normal. "Azula was the one that actually broke your box, in my opinion." The awed lad then bowed down in front of Azula and said, "Azula," adding, "Thank you. I am now free. I am in your debt, till my death." When Azula at last rose to her full height, she dwarfed him. This was the supposedly imprisoned devil that the original Avatar had. He was only a boy. He can't possibly be so powerful, right? Azula then recalled that the current Avatar is also a boy. And if the markings were accurate, this devil was so strong that an Avatar was frightened of him. She was unable to resist smiling internally. By pure luck, she had discovered a weapon that might even be more powerful than the Avatar. Azula's situation simply kept getting better and better. Her head held high. She asked, "What is your name?" She had her hands on her waist. "My name. I used to go by the name Naruto," he recalled, recalling that day. He was released from his alleged eternal prison on the day Princess Azula did so. Naruto was imprisoned and was unable to leave his meditation state. He spent the last eons traveling the constantly shifting landscapes of the so-called spirit world. Naruto was therefore aware of some of the happenings around him. Additionally, Naruto was aware that individuals now use the natural energies present around them rather than their own inner energies, or chakra. Naruto found it amusing that people in his day could handle elemental chakra with ease but not the fundamentals. He gave various examples of how to use chakra and elemental chakra throughout his first few days with Princess Azula and her entourage. They were all in awe that someone else could be an expert in all four elements and even had greater abilities than the Avatar. Naruto discovered that people no longer utilized hand seals and had begun to shape their chakras instead through complex movements. In a manner, he likened them to dance. This provided him an advantage in battle since his adversaries would be perplexed by what he was doing. And before they were, he would have dispatched them. The fact that Naruto never encountered any avatars while he was in the spirit realm baffled him. Not once throughout his incarceration. Azula also inquired as to his immortality and his status as a devil. He even demonstrated that death could never touch him by laughing at his remark. You ask, how? After 5 agonizing minutes of intense burning, he calmly exited the inferno, his burned skin already beginning to mend. He had instructed all the firebenders to burn him without holding back. However, this wasn't the only display. Although he was also clubbed, poisoned, impaled, and even decapitated, the outcome was the same. He remained silent throughout everything, which frightened Azula's group even more. However, not Azula. If there was one thing that Naruto possessed in abundance that she respected and admired, it was his might. She could declare that he could defeat the Avatar with ease and still be able to face off against her father without tiring. The usage of what Azula dubbed Kyuubi's chakra, which he could readily employ even though the Kyuubi was no longer there, was what Azula most vividly recalled about her time with Naruto. But even without the unquenchable bloodlust, the cloak would still manifest. Naruto's talents were all strengthened by using this cloak, making him a formidable opponent. She was still in disbelief that she had discovered him by pure chance. The finest thing that could have possibly occurred to him was that, at this moment, Naruto is discovered on Azula's ship, dozing off on the deck. He was lying down and gazing up at the night sky. He was deeply analyzing his current situation while lost in thought. There was no denying the Fire Nation's terrible intentions. Even their ships appeared downright nefarious. In fact, however, just because some people believe that the Fire Nation is evil does not necessarily indicate that they are. Ironically, the Fire Nation was situated where Hai no Kuni was. Naruto has come to terms with the fact that not everything is black and white during his time as a ninja. He had to do missions that weren't seen as pleasant. However, in the 2 weeks since becoming partners with the Fire Nation, he has gained more respect than he did when he was a leaf-based shinobi. Another regrettable aspect was that he was only treated like a human being after he nearly saved Konoha from pain and succeeded in rescuing Uchiha Sasuke. And after so many years of making the same effort to be taken seriously as a person, with the same outcome each time, the routine simply became too difficult to carry out. The basic line was that he would always, and I mean always, be viewed as the Kyuubi, as a demon, as long as he was a Jinchuriki. Naruto then followed logic. He acknowledged that he was a devil. During the battle with Akatsuki, he demonstrated to everyone exactly how much of a demon he truly was. Naruto broke loose when he was in the front lines, battling thousands of ninja under Madara's influence. The most recent shinobi conflict was also the bloodiest and shortest of them ever. Like his father before him, his reputation helped him obtain the position of Rokudame Hokage. Azula standing above him startled Naruto out of his stroll down memory lane. He spoke as he slowly rose. Naruto was at least 1.5 feet higher than Princess Azula when he stood to his full height. And he asked, "Well, good evening, Princess Azula. What brings you out here in the dead of night? Come keep me company, please." Naruto moved up to Azula and positioned his face inches close from hers, saying, "No, I wanted to tell you about where we will be going right now. No need in keeping you in the dark." Naruto was silent for a while before saying, "You should let your hair down, Azula. You'll look 10 times prettier." And just to prove his point, her hair suddenly fell out of its knot, her clip in Naruto's hand. But it's so much fun not being able to know. I like being under pressure during combat and improvising on the spot. See what I mean? With just your attractiveness, you'd entice the adversaries into a trap and murder them. H-O-H-O-H-O-H-O-H-O. That's what I like about you, Azula. So strong and feisty, roared Naruto as blue flames blasted him back roughly 10 feet. Naruto, to his credit, faced the flame head-on as Azula yelled, "Shut up," as she launched another ball of fire at him. His fitful laughing could be heard over the raging flames. He vanished when the flames subsided, only to return behind Azula. She uttered a chow as Naruto placed his right hand on her belly and held her hands behind her back. With simply a flick of his wrist, Azula's armor dropped to the ground, confusing her beyond belief. "You should relax down, princess. Tension isn't good for you." She shivered as he whispered relax into her ear. Azula grunted in protest, managed to release her left arm, and slashed Naruto in the face, causing him to chuckle once more. He returned with a stumble, freeing Azula in the process. Azula threw a lightning bolt at Naruto's face, fully scorching it off, as soon as she was a few good paces away. He continued to laugh like nothing had happened even after this. Another bolt struck his breast, saying, "Unleash all your rage on me." Another struck him where his heart was, saying, "Come on, Azula, strike me down, kill this demon," and a third blew off his arm. Azula was absolutely exhausted after a few more bullets and collapsed on her knees. Naruto approached her in a nonchalant manner while simultaneously rejoining his arm. Now that he was at her eye level, he crouched down. She continued, "You don't have to tell me anything, princess. I can hear and see everything. By the way, I know that we will be picking up Prince Zuko and General Iroh soon. Then we would go back to the capital of the Fire Nation and blah blah blah." Naruto then noticed that her right forefinger and middle finger were still smoking. "And you shouldn't overdo it, too." He slowly lifted her arm and began to lick and suck her fingers. Azula's fingertips were no longer emitting smoke when he was finished. Naruto was given a slap in the face for saying, "Did you know you taste sweet? Princess, I'm sorry it wounded you. Let me help you get to your chamber." After a few days, Zuko turned to look at his sister's ship, which clearly dwarfed his own. He tightened his fist in readiness. Ba Sing Se had fallen and there had been word of the Avatar's passing for a week. He would now be returning to the Fire Nation on a ride with his sister, and if his father agreed, he would be free to return permanently to his hometown. Yes, for 3 years, he worked toward achieving this. He is ecstatic beyond words. The person standing next to her was the only thing that made him feel uneasy. Zuko is aware that when his sister became interested in you, you were either going to die or you were a really strong person. The blonde boy's constant grin made it clear that he understood, too. Naruto chuckled to himself, "Hey Azula, look at that. Half of his face is fried." Hiro, who was bound behind Zuko, was soon in front of them. When Zuko noticed Naruto's flaming eyes, he took a step back. People say staring at a boy is disrespectful. Ty Lee, who was strolling next to Naruto, Mai on her left side, chided Naruto. "Stop frightening Zuko. I'm so glad to see you again, Zuko. Are you delighted that you may now return home?" Zuko spat as he approached Azula's ship, saying, "Let's just get this over with. There's no need to drag this out longer than it has to." Azula looked down at the shattered image of her uncle and said, "Your words wound me, brother." Before allowing the soldiers to transport him aboard her ship, she mocked. Zuko asked, leaning on the railings, "Who's going to connect my spacecraft to yours?" When he noticed Azula looking warmly at him, he winced. That smile was unique to her. Azula asked, glaring angrily towards Zuko's spacecraft, "You mean that horrible thing? Destroy it," she said before turning to face Naruto. Zuko shouted in vain, "What? No," as Naruto hopped on the railings and extended his hands in the air. Nothing happened at first. Zuko's ship then gently floated to the air as the waves began to swell. He pulled back his right arm and made an unseen blade of wind as soon as it was level with Naruto. Zuko yelled, "Don't do it, don't do it," before his ship was split in two and then crushed into a solid metal ball. It then casually fell back into the sea. Naruto asked, his grin returning to his face, "Did you say something, Prince? Was that your ship? I see." In answer, Zuko simply yelled into the sky while letting out a shower of fire. Aang sat up on the bed and questioned, Where am I?" He realizes that he is no longer in the Earth Kingdom and that, based on the sounds he heard outside, he is now on a ship of the Fire Nation. To the Fire Nation in 2 days. After spending some time on Azula's ship, Zuko learned 2 new things. He knew Naruto was a highly strong person who could compete with the Avatar, and he also knew that Naruto was rumored to be Azula's new pet, whose leash was, in fact, extremely long. He believed that he had complete freedom to do whatever he chose. He could even play around with Azula. That no one carried out. He wasn't sure if he was simply plain annoying her or if he was flirting with her. In either case, he was aware that it was best to avoid him unless you wanted to become enraged yourself. Naruto managed to say exactly the perfect thing to make you feel uncomfortable. He even had the power to stir up Mai, who is usually stoic. When Zuko turned to check who it was, he saw it was Mai and asked, "Are you cold?" 3 years have passed since I last visited my home, Zuko said as he turned to face the ocean. A lot has undoubtedly happened since then. Mai, who was more irritable than normal, interrupted Zuko, saying, "I asked whether you were chilly, not your life story." Most likely, she was already angry with Naruto when she arrived here. Before Mai moved closer and unexpectedly kissed him, Zuko had a thought. She said, returning to the ship, "You ought to quit worrying." Initially taken aback by what she did, Zuko eventually grinned. "I should stop fretting, she's probably right. The situation will be okay." That immediately made Zuko's mood happier. His mood abruptly returned to wow. I bet even the ghosts didn't see that one occurring. When he looked back, Naruto was perched on the railings, gazing out toward the water. But for some unknown reason, Naruto was not his typical self. He said, "But Mai has a point. You should stop with the freaking out. It's not good for your health." He was much calmer than before, Zuko noticed. He turned abruptly to the scarred prince. "Tell me, Prince, is it worth it?" "What's it worth?" Zuko responds. "Your honor, is it worthwhile to turn on your allies for this?" Zuko asked, his voice filled with rage. "What are you talking about?" Immediately after saying, "Me, I'm not talking about anything. Good night, Zuko. Dream sweet dreams." Naruto walked off the terrace and into his room. The Hokage exclaimed as he was surrounded by a number of NBU, Jounin, and Chunin level shinobi. "What is the purpose of this?" Uchiha Sasuke, now blind in his right eye, spoke from behind the throng. "It was a mistake picking you to be the Hokage." "Naruto, what were we thinking choosing a monster to lead us? I mean, is this real or am I dreaming? I ask." A man in his late 30s approached Naruto, who was paralyzed, and asked, "So, you're the demon everyone is talking about?" He had a crimson beard that reached his chest despite being hairless. He had a good build and dressed in green. due largely to him and a specific Biju. The elemental nations had been extinct for 500 years, and he had been cut off from everyone and everything up until this point. He made himself at home in the former Iwagakure no Sato. However, because they were all gone, nobody lived here any longer. What are you doing in my cave and who are you? Demon, this cave will be your prison, declared Avatar Kyor. I remember that day. Heh, even after I beat him half to death, he kept coming back. Kyor's eyes began to sparkle as he utilized all of his abilities to hoist up a 3-story cube around the chained-up Naruto. Yelling, "It is over, demon. You're finished." The Avatar defeated Naruto and everyone in the room, including the earth, fire, wind, and water benders. Witnessed the victory. Naruto's chakra cloak erupted into life, and 3 tails worth of strength erupted as well. Even if you strike me down 1,000 times, Avatar, I'll always stand right back up. I can never be killed. I am immortal, and I am the Kyuubi, he cried. A ring of fire and a powerful breeze appeared out of nowhere as soon as the slab of stone that served as the cube's roof was covered. When I'm out, Avatar, you better watch out. I'll be back. One day, as the first rays of the day's sunshine came through his room's windows, Naruto slowly opened his eyes. He carefully got out of bed and only then realized he was perspiring. Land was visible over the horizon, and they would likely arrive there in a few hours, so he got up and walked to the window. As he prepared for the day, he sighed. Brother and sister were eating their breakfast in peace in the ship's mess hall. Azula was reading a scroll that had arrived through messenger pigeon that same morning, while Zuko was simply staring at his bowl of food while dressed as usual. It had directions on what to do when they got there and was from the Imperial Palace. They were reportedly instructed to proceed directly to the palace so that Fire Lord Ozai could speak with his Zuko. Azula observed her brother while looking up from the scroll. He appeared to be in a trance because of how intensely he was gazing at his bowl. His left hand used a spoon to make designs on his food as his right arm supported his head on the table. But when his soup began to bubble, Zuko halted what he was doing. Azula blinked in response. They were eating oatmeal, surely they shouldn't have bubbled up like that. His face was only a few inches from the bowl when it exploded all over his face, and she kept a sharp gaze on him. Ty Lee remarked in between fits of laughing, "Good one, Rudo." Azula glanced to where the voice was coming from and noticed Mai, Ty Lee, and Naruto sticking their heads out from behind the doorframe. Mai was laughing too, though she was attempting to disguise it under her long sleeves. Even a little. Naruto yelled at Zuko, "You need to loosen up. Moping around day and night makes you look more foolish than you already are." As a furious prince rushed the trio out of the mess hall, Azula muttered as she resumed reading the scroll, "Idiots." Ong yelled, "Are we going to sneak into the Fire Nation?" before grasping his broken ribs. Afternoon. While Azula was practicing her fire bending, Naruto was nearby keeping an eye on her while the others were dispersed across the ship. She turned to look at Naruto and noticed that he was also practicing, going through a number of the technique's hand seals, as he calls them. Raika no Jutsu, says Katten. Dragon Fire Technique, Fire Release. Naruto spat out a torrent of flame, which rapidly reformed a few feet above him. It initially appeared to be a typical stream of fire before changing into a roaring dragon. Before racing into the water, it raced into the air, producing heated steam as it went. Was that something? I was thinking as Azula walked up to Naruto through the steam. She observed Naruto painstakingly wiping off the dew that had accumulated on his all-black outfit as the steam gradually dissipated. Azula would agree that he was attractive at the moment if she weren't so obstinate. "I want you to teach me how you could bend so simply," she said, catching his eye. He grinned at her before letting her finish. Naruto noticed her bewildered expression and approached her, saying, "Bend." "I'm not truly bending, more like chakra manipulation. I'll describe it now in the simplest terms possible." Azula instantly said, "Are you implying that I'm stupid? You see my point, right?" "What? No, of course not. I simply want to make it sound easy so I don't have to repeat myself over and over and over again." "Start doing it now." A lightning strike narrowly missed his head. "Can you at least say please?" Laughing, Naruto said, "Ha. That's why I like you, Azula. Always so full of energy and never scared to fight." He then went behind her before continuing, his voice taking on an air of old wisdom. "Chakra is a vital component of even the most fundamental jutsu. It is a mixture of the physical energy present in every cell of the body and the spiritual energy gained from practice and experience. Once mixed, it can be channeled through the chakra circulatory system, which is to chakra what the regular circulatory system is to blood, to any of the 361 chakra points called tenketsu in the body. He explained further by bending fire and launching another fire dragon, saying, there are two different types of chakra. Normal chakra is a form of energy all living creatures naturally produce to some degree. And elemental chakra. The people in this era strangely have really strong control over their elemental chakra. And instead of hand seals, you guys learn to manipulate them through bending. When it comes down to it, concentration is all you need. They both practiced into the wee hours. Azula had the potential to be a great shinobi. But there was one flaw. Humans nowadays only have 100 chakra points, as opposed to the 361 they had in the past. Which is why they bend instead of using hand seals, mainly in their hands, feet, legs, arms, and heads. She wouldn't be able to utilize any non-elemental jutsu without the other 261. Additionally, the bending actions take the place of hand seals, and because they are more grand in nature, they are able to access enough chakra through the few remaining chakra points in their body. Naruto had the idea that the only people who had enough chakra points to fully utilize elemental chakra are the avatars. Azula was soon lying on the ground, obviously weary, whereas Naruto scarcely perspired. He approached Azula gently and sat down next to her. He came in close to Azula and said, I think it's pointless to try to train you. It would have been great teaching you how to use Sage Mode. He chuckled softly as he picked up Azula, who was already fast asleep. Not to mention you being my apprentice. Doesn't that just glide off the tip of your tongue? Apprentice Azula, now that's a title. A palanquin, really? They still use these after 1,000 years. I wonder if dear old dad would accept of a 1,000-year-old dating his 14-year-old daughter. Whom I regarded a pedophile. The noblemen of numerous cultures around the world employ the palanquin as a mode of litter transportation. One typically requires 4-6 workers to carry it. When traveling beyond the palace, the Fire Nation believes it is the duty of a member of the royal family to always ride in one. Princess Azula was currently riding one and traveling to the royal palace. Being the older brother, Prince Zuko was a few feet in front of her. At contrast to Naruto, who insisted on being in the front, Mai and Ty Lee were positioned on Azula's left side. Naruto berated the carriers, who all appeared to be skinny and frail. Not only is it slow, but it makes you a target there in the open. At least add some armor plating or use a body double. You'd think you guys would be more careful given you were in a war. Azula, who was attempting to look regal while resisting the impulse to jump off the dang thing and assault Naruto, retorted, no one in their right minds would dare harm the Fire Nation's royal family. And no one is stupid enough to actually try and sneak into the Fire Nation. Naruto continued to walk with the other two girls, saying, you guys don't have any type of assassins anymore. I guess you guys are a bit more civilized to not utilize such an underhanded technique as assassinations. Hey fellas, how you doing? Mai replied with her arms folded, aside from being bored walking to the palace. Nothing much really. Naruto questioned as he saw Mai whirling one of her throwing blades, oddly reminding him of someone. Well, what's up with you, Ty? Ty Lee proclaimed, I can't wait to get to the palace. You'll like it there, Naruto. The cuisine is amazing. As the air surrounding her became more upbeat, Naruto, who desperately needed his fix, inquired, do they have ramen? He hadn't consumed any of the divine substance in a very long time. Mai, who really didn't care and was just attempting to pass the time, questioned, ramen. What's a ramen? Naruto had his hands clasped together in an imploring manner, hoping that they weren't serious when they said, are you serious? All of you don't know about ramen. Spirits, what has this world turned into? Zuko, tell me you know about ramen. Zuko said almost immediately, never heard of it. Like everyone else, he was utterly bored and eager to reach the palace. Naruto was already planning what to prepare for his pals when he said, that's simply amazing. Well, it's settled then. I have to cook ramen for you guys to show you what all of you are missing. Should he prepare his preferred miso ramen or? They were met by a procession of people as they got closer to the palace. While others clapped for them, some were throwing flowers at the group. Even young children came up to them to present them the costly and rare fire lilies. But when a kid caught a glimpse of Naruto's eyes, they fled in tears. He grumbled and grabbed the flower the youngster had dropped, putting it in his pocket. Ty Lee couldn't help but grin at Naruto's cynicism, and they thought I wasn't good with kids. The palace's front doors were connected to the main gates by a red carpet that was also covered in fresh rose petals. Azula was the second person off the transport after Zuko. Everyone who had lined up along the path bowed to them while knelt, with their heads practically touching the ground. With her left hand on the small of her back, she made a sweeping motion that motioned to the people, then to the enormous palace in front of them, saying, welcome to the Fire Nation, Naruto. the strongest in the entire world. Greetings from your new house, the nation above the fire. Ong, who was employing a combination of water and air bending to conceal Appa in a cloud, asked, "Do you see someplace we can land?" Sokka and Katara were surveying the huge valleys and plains of the Fire Nation. Sokka, who was on Appa, yelled, "Over there," almost falling off. Fortunately, Katara caught him before he fell to his death. "I think the cave I observed earlier is big enough to conceal Appa." "Well then, let's get to landing, shall we?" Sokka informed them of his strategy as soon as they were comfortably situated in the cave. All three nodded as they walked towards the town. "Okay guys, first thing we're going to need is new clothes. We'll head into town and find what we can. Let's try to be quiet about these people. We don't want to get captured now, do we?" Finding clothing for the entire group wasn't all that difficult. Ong had discovered an unattended clothesline with outfits that were a perfect match for them as soon as they had entered the doorway. It appeared as though the spirits were finally letting them off the hook. Up until they entered the main plaza, everything was going according to plan. However, when Sokka instructed them to blend in with the crowd, things weren't quite as low-key. Ong claimed to be an authority on Fire Nation customs because he had previously visited the country. The issue was that was a century ago. Toph listened to Ong's archaic terms and words as he was keeping a watch on things, so to speak. "Well, your only good plan just went down the toilet, Sokka." "What now?" he said. If they weren't required to maintain a low profile, she would probably be laughing and rolling on the ground. "I'm so depressed I don't even have the willpower to yell at him longer. So why don't we just get something to eat and let Ong figure this one out?" Sokka said as she left with the two girls, failing to notice Ong being hauled off by a bunch of men. If they had continued, they would have probably overheard one of the males say, "You're in serious trouble, youngster. Skipping class is a serious infraction." Palace, Naruto listened to Lo and Lai, Azula's ancestors and advisors, speak about their triumph over the important city of Ba Sing Se, Prince Zuko's comeback and, of course, the Avatar's demise. Confetti and flowers were tossed in the air in jubilation as the crowd yelled loudly. He couldn't help but go back to when he had been crowned Rokudaime Hokage. The happiest day of his eternal life had been that one. As he thought back on the betrayal that had sent him on an uncontrollable rampage, his features twisted into a scowl. He was suddenly crushed as the railings he was gripping groaned in protest. "Ultimately, I was shown to be mistaken." He shivered before his big grin reappeared. "I always told them I wasn't a monster, but in the end." He let out a chuckle that could have had Orochimaru cower in terror. "They were accurate. I'm a beast." Despite not being particularly loud, Zuko, Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee all heard Naruto chuckle. It was utterly saturated in depravity and insanity. Different ideas crossed their brains, but Azula noticed a familiarity in his eyes. She was very familiar with the sensation of loneliness. She felt her chest constrict before brushing it off and turning to face the throng of devoted subjects. All of this will soon be hers, and she meant it completely. Her voice was raised so that she could be heard as she turned to face her brother Zuko. Zuko's head moved so quickly that Azula was afraid it would break off. "I nearly forgot to tell you that our father wants to talk with you. He's probably going to congratulate you for killing the Avatar." What? But you killed him?" the speaker exclaimed. She gave her brother a look that said, "We're both dead if he's still alive," and added, "Oh please brother, the spirits know you need the reputation to get into father's good graces again. Besides, there's nothing to worry about, right? The Avatar is dead. He is undoubtedly dead because your lightning struck him directly." "Good," Azula said as she stepped down the balcony, Naruto following closely behind. Before Azula finished her step and turned to face Naruto, he said, "Princess, I am aware of the fact that the Avatar is still alive, but do you understand what it implies?" With a strong wind gust and the words "your will be done," Azula, Naruto vanished. Azula took a moment to observe where Naruto was standing before picking up her pace. She had to tell her father what she discovered beneath Ba Sing Se. He would be happy that the Nation of Fire now had a new trick under its sleeve. She wouldn't mention that the Avatar was still alive. She didn't want her father to think poorly of her. With Ong, the following day, although he didn't want to cover his airbending arrow, he did so in order to blend in at the school he was unintentionally attending. He would be able to learn firebending directly from a teacher rather than via the scrolls they have amassed during their travels, which was actually a lucky break for him. Ong turned to face the musical instrument in his two hands. It was known as a tsungi horn, and it had an absurd appearance. However, he didn't care because he enjoyed playing it and was open to trying new games. In the shadows, Naruto observed the music teacher chastise Ong for dancing. When you tell people that he was acting on the directions of the meanest 14-year-old, getting access and a spare teacher's uniform is simple. The workforce as a whole stopped bothering him because of the inside joke and allowed him to behave as he liked. He was baffled by this new avatar, though. He didn't give off the same aura Kyor did. In reality, he was only a young child. He could easily murder him from where he was. He wasn't going to, though. He was intrigued by Ong and wanted to learn more about him before killing him. Ong, who was speaking to his friend Onjai, said, "I could teach you how." She enjoyed learning from Ong and found his dancing moves amusing, up until her boyfriend Hyde furiously yanked her away from Ong. He flung his right fist towards Ong, who deftly avoided it. "Okay, that's it. I warned you yesterday, didn't I? Talk to my woman and you're dead meat," he yelled. Hyde attempted to hit the airbender once more, but it was still too slow. Ong sidestepped another strike before Hyde's overextended blow knocked him off balance. "Wow, you're really slow, aren't you?" Hyde said. He hits the hard ground face first as he falls. Ong turns to face the academy's headmaster, who is approaching him and doesn't appear to be in a good mood. The headmaster begins yelling at Ong after noticing Hyde's prone state. His tone was insulting and enraged, which caused Naruto to act. "I want your mom to be here tomorrow for a parent-teacher conference. Do you understand?" he said. He took the headmaster a few feet away before whispering, "Headmaster, please don't be too hasty to judgment. I observed what happened here and I can guarantee you that Kuzan did nothing wrong." Before the headmaster realized what had just been spoken, Naruto left the sentence hanging. Besides headmaster, this boy was transferred from the Earth Kingdom. As he watched the headmaster return to Ong and reprimand him, Naruto simply shrugged at the response. "I see. Well then, that explains it. But he will still be punished for his actions." After learning enough about the Avatar to be pleased, Naruto made the decision to leave the academy. Palace, he could always use another soldier, and the way Azula spoke about this Naruto character made him think he was a very skilled bender. So he was waiting for him in his throne room. Fire Lord Ozai was in a better mood than usual. Hearing the news of the fall of Ba Sing Se was one thing, but hearing his son, who was the one to actually defeat the Avatar, made him forget how much of a disappointment he was. The standard soldier uniform, with the exception that it was all black and the collar was slightly higher, was revealed, along with a blonde-haired boy with the strangest set of scars he had ever seen on his cheeks, blood-red eyes, and black slits for pupils. He approached the Fire Lord slowly. Each step he took had a purpose. Naruto walked like he was born into royalty of some kind. As soon as he was in front of the Fire Lord, well, you know how to conduct yourself when your bosses are present. However, Naruto, tell me, where are you from? The Fire Lord said this while stroking his long goatee. "I used to reside here before going on vacation." "Oh, I see. You live in the Fire Nation." "You may say so, but this place was formerly known as Hai no Kuni before I was abducted. However, that name hasn't been used for almost 1,000 years. That caused Ozai to lean back on his chair and ask, 1,000 years? Who is this kid? After clearing his throat. "So when you were still active, you were a soldier." "Yes, I was regarded as the strongest person in my community." He was particularly interested in the tailed demons that once inhabited particular people to wield unfathomable power, and he even did some research on what had happened to them. However, all the beasts died except for one, which was the strongest. Ozai was in deep thought. "I see," he said. "I had heard of that name before. It was in one of the history books that told what was before the creation of the four nations. If what you're saying is accurate, you must be familiar with demons." The Fire Lord was pushed to the brink of his throne by Naruto's smile. Perhaps he knew something about the previous one. "The demons with tails. Yes, I am aware of them. There were a total of 9. However, there is now just one person remaining alive in the real world. Are you aware of what transpired to them?" "Well, I had friends who served as these devil's containers. The creatures were extracted from their bodies violently, which led to the deaths of all of them. These crimes were committed by a terrorist organization that is long since disbanded. I was able to kill them and release the creatures with the help of my allies. The creatures made the decision to return to their plane of existence after being freed. The nine-tailed demon, the strongest of the bunch, was the only one that persisted since it was never freed from its host and continued to exist in the real world. I am the host of Nine Tails, the Fire Lord said, leaning back on his throne. Yes, I thought as much. Once he put 2 and 2 together, it became abundantly clear. It's easy to speculate about the missing demon and the youngster who has been around for a millennium. You must have a personal objective, else why would you ally yourself with the Fire Nation? I ran out of agendas after living for 500 years and being imprisoned for another 500, but now I share Azula's ambitions. She saved me from my endless prison, and I owe her my life for her benevolence. The Fire Lord was now deep in thinking. You may depart now, Naruto. I look forward in witnessing your skills on the battlefield. Will his presence make his plans simpler or more difficult? Several stories up. Enter. He entered Azula's room nonchalantly and was ready to remark on her bathrobe when he saw the frown on her face. As he approached her from behind, he asked, "Princess Azula, are you okay?" Azula was gazing out of the window in her bedroom. She had a grimace on her face. She discovered Zuko seeing Iroh, which is why she would suffer due of her connection to Zuko if anyone learned about this, and his reputation would suffer as well. Perhaps she ought to let Naruto to murder both Zuko and Iroh. That is not a good idea. Zuko was required by Azula as the scapegoat. If the Avatar appeared once more, he would be at fault. She gave Naruto a brief moment of her attention before turning to face the window. Another issue was her father. He would have known what Naruto was by this point, and he would likely be planning how to manipulate him through her. This was meant to be a joyful occasion for her. Now these annoyances had ruined it. Her shoulders were gently touched, jolting her out of her reverie. She said with a low charge of electricity coursing through her body, "Princess, you look disturbed. You know that you could contact me for anything, correct? I offer everything to you, my life or otherwise," thereby tickling and calming her muscles. Naruto leaned near to her ear, like he was whispering a secret that only she should hear. "You may share your problems with me. I won't mind. I am your buddy and I will always be there for you, Azula, so trust in me." As soon as his hands left Azula, she started to get cold. When she looked around, Naruto was grinning at her as well. He usually smiled evilly and sadistically, but not this time. For Azula, his smile conveyed warmth that permeated her entire being. She wasn't sure why, but being the obstinate girl that she was, she quickly brushed the emotion off and spoke. She responded, already preparing for what they would have to do. "Very well then. I have orders from the Fire Lord that we are to crush any lingering Earth Kingdom threats." "What of the Avatar?" "Oh, that boy. You won't have any issues with him, Princess Azula. Aang and his companions would have to find another location to hide and lay low for a while." That night, Aang received a warning from Avatar Roku. Meanwhile, Aang and his pals flee from the Academy's teachers and headmasters. "Aang, I'm sorry I couldn't get in touch with you sooner, but you need to pay close attention. A long-dormant evil has awoken. You absolutely must stop it now since it has sided with the Fire Nation. If that demon is really assisting the Fire Nation, then I fear that this will bring an end to peace and destroy the delicate balance of the entire world. The only person who can stop him will be you, of all people. So take care. You must master all the elements because the demon is in charge of them. Please, Aang, the future of the entire world is more precarious than ever. Keep in mind, Aang, that it is your duty to preserve and restore world harmony. The greatest challenge you'll encounter is that beast. I apologize, but I can only issue one more warning. Keep an eye out for the man with the red eyes." A chilly sweat arose as Aang came to. Azula was capable of a lot, but we weren't quite prepared to take on at least a few hundred earthbenders. Although she brought a sizable number of soldiers, they weren't prepared to be split up right once. They were taking cover on a beached Fire Nation ship while she was with Ty Lee and Mai. It was fortunate that Toph and the other earthbenders weren't fighting. Mai dived from a rock that smashed on the ship's hull, asking, "Where the hell did Naruto go?" Ty Lee was in a better attitude than the other two despite their current predicament. "Don't worry folks. I bet that Naruto has a plan to save us." Azula, however, remained mute while she considered how to free them from this predicament. Raisen Shuriken, a futon. As Naruto used his most potent wind-based strike, a darkness was cast over all the earthbenders. He began to make hand seals at such a rapid pace that his hands faded from reality as he let the lethal swirling ball of wind and chakra go. "Raika no Jutsu," says Katten. The fire-shaped dragon roared to life and crashed into the Raisen Shuriken's growing form. The wind ball immediately became larger and spread the flames out in all directions. Only a select few people, however, managed to escape the terrible attack. "You filthy earthbenders, don't think I'm done with you." Zanshu no Jutsu Taj Shinj. The unfortunate earthbenders had no idea that a few hundred cage buncheons would drag each and every one of them into the ground until Naruto finished it off by saying, "H Senka no Jutsu," says Katten. The only sounds heard on the battlefield were the enemy's screams as he hurled countless fireballs at the heads of each foe. Naruto yelled, "I despise earthbenders," as he kicked a black head into ashes. The fact that Avatar Kyor was also an earthbending may have contributed to his rage, saying, "They all deserve to die." Naruto was now driven by rage as he observed more of them approaching him. They were accompanied by a couple tanks from the Earth Kingdom. His four-tailed state suddenly sprung into life, So you guys want to play? Fine with me. Behind him, 4 angry red chakra tails were moving. But since just Naruto's hands and feet were covered in the dark substance, this change was under control. Above his head, the black substance also took the form of 2 fox ears. While crouching on all fours, Naruto focused. Right in front of Naruto's face, a dark chakra ball began to form and became larger as the seconds passed. Unexpectedly, Naruto ate the energy ball, which was the size of a fist, and smoke came out of his mouth. Naruto was instantly surrounded by a 10 feet wide crater of pressured ground. He then fired a destructive energy beam at the little army with a deafening roar. Not even the tanks were pushed back by the powerful beam. It just cut a path through them on its way to the little fortress, which was home to several hundred more earthbenders, both military and civilian. The laser exploded into an all-white dome of death, illuminating the entire globe. With a frown on his face, Naruto regarded his creation. This did not satisfy him. All he wanted to do was kill every descendant of Kyor by his hands as old feelings from the past resurfaced. But he mastered his emotions and trained his face with a calm that could only come from centuries of meditation. Azula was now standing next to the other Fire Nation troops as he turned back to her. He was met with startled looks from everyone as his cloak slowly disappeared. He picked himself up and approached the startled group, saying, "Well, that takes care of the final pocket of Earth Kingdom dangers. I for one think we need a vacation. At least I do. What do you want to do now, princess? Go home or what?" Ty Lee was virtually leaping up and down with excitement as he declared, "I want to travel to Ember Island." A little resort called Ember Island is situated in the Fire Nation's outer islands. There are numerous opulent resorts and second houses there that are popular with the wealthy and powerful. The beaches are some of the most well-liked in the nation, and they frequently hold QI ball tournaments. The Fire Nation's premier vacation spot was there. Actually, I think that's a terrific idea, and Lo and Lai welcomed us to their beach house once we finished, too, before they returned to the Fire Nation to get some new casual apparel. That is what took place. They didn't linger for long before leaving for Ember Island. They were currently traveling on a private barge, roughly halfway to the island. Everyone was engaged in their own activity. Ty Lee was looking up at the clouds as Zuko, who was also invited, was conversing with Mai. She put her hands behind her back and exclaimed, "I'm so happy to spend the weekend on Ember Island. It's going to be amazing to hang out on the beach and do nothing. We're being sent on a forced vacation. I feel like a child." Zuko murmured as he rose up, his robes flowing in the breeze. Doing nothing is a waste of time. He leaned down the rails and stared out into the sea. "Don't take it personally," Azula said, lying down on the railings with her back to Ember Island. "Dad wants to speak with his advisors alone." Ty Lee questioned, "Doesn't your family have a home on Ember Island?" Azula said as she gazed at her companion, "We used to come here every summer when we were youngsters. That must have been enjoyable." Zuko, who was still gazing out into the ocean, interjected, "That was a long time ago." Mai gave her boyfriend a fleeting glance before turning to Naruto. All 4 of them turned to face Naruto, who was riding the animal that resembled a hippo and was tied to the front of the ship. Azula, what's Naruto doing?" As the hippo continued to dip its head into the water and splash him, Naruto was grinning broadly. Unsurprisingly, he was already wearing his orange swimming trunks. Ty Lee eventually climbed aboard the creature as well, saying, "It looks fun." As it made happy noises, the company quickly arrived at the docks, where Lo and Lai were waiting to welcome them. They both said, "Welcome to Ember Island, kids." At the same time, a home perched atop the cliff faced directly behind them, except for Naruto, who rushed toward it while carrying their full luggage. None of them expected it to look so tiny. Zuko said to his fiancée, "It smells like an old lady in here," and she immediately responded. Mai responded stoically, "Gee, I wonder why." Ty Lee was examining a photograph that was hanging on the wall. It featured 2 women dressed in golden 2-piece suits. They were hunched over, their butts clinging to one another. She pointed at the enormous image and asked, "Who are these 2 lovely women?" The twins simultaneously said, "Can't you tell? It's Lo and Lai." They both exclaimed, striking the identical position as in the photo. Zuko and Naruto both guffawed at their behavior. Ember Island is a magical place. Have an open mind, and it will help you understand oneself and each other. Lo remarked as her sister, Lai, continued, "We know you're all upset and being pushed into traveling here this weekend, but give it a chance." Both ladies stated as they showed their swimsuits underneath their shirts, "Time to hit the beach." The others watched in a mixture of amazement, terror, and disgust in Naruto's case because this time he actually puked. Mai covered Zuko's eyes. "There are moments when I wish my eyes were that high definition. mother of pearl. Meanwhile, Ong and his pals were on the island in a different area. Currently, they were swimming in a big water-filled crater. Momo and Ong were floating while Katara wrung the water from her hair. Sokka was with Appa, while Toph was perched on a rock. She questioned, plunging her feet into the chilly water. Ong, are you sure you're supposed to be exposed like that? Ong exclaimed when he discovered a tunnel that generated a natural water cascade down to who knows where. What? I'm wearing trunks. Katara finally managed to get her hair partly dry. Besides, there are walls all around us. No one's going to see, she said. Ong and Momo both laughed as they slipped down the cave. 2 Fire Nation troops were sitting around aimlessly where the slide came to an end. One of them said, picking the middle of his toes with the hilt of his sword, "This is definitely the most boring job ever." Both of them were drawn to a splash behind them, at which point they both collapsed onto their bellies. Ong emerged from the water with his arrow clearly visible as they peered up from their cover. As soon as Ong jumped back up into the crater, the guards grabbed their messenger hawk and began writing down what they had seen. "The Avatar is alive. We best notify the Fire Lord," they said. It took off and disappeared into the distance. Back in their beach attire, Azula and the group were already on the shore. They were now seeking a place to relax, while Naruto did it to Azula, albeit not as closely. Zuko was holding an umbrella over him and Mai. As soon as Azula chased away the kids making sand castles there, a location became available for them. A slim boy came up to Ty Lee and offered to help her unpack her beach bag. But as she flung the bag at him, he crashed to the ground. Everything was swiftly unpacked, and the blanket was even spread out. Ty Lee smiled as she sat down, but the sun was making her blind. She caught the lad's attention and asked, "Could you shift a little to the?" Before she could finish, the boy moved in front of her, blotting off the sun. Perfect, as he watched Zuko offer a shell to Mai before tossing it aside. Naruto asked, "You want me to unpack your suitcase for you, Azula?" Another child who was nearby was forced to stare at Ty Lee after the shell hit his area. Boy number 2 was kneeling in front of Ty Lee and offering her the same shell faster than the eye could see. "Wow, Fankyo, this is very lovely. Not as attractive as you are." Ty Lee was hit by the sun as the boy remarked, "That shell is not that fantastic. Shade, please." As he removed Azula's hairpin and caused her long hair to fall down, Naruto said, "I have an idea, Azula." Naruto sat behind their umbrella and said, "Now wait and watch." Soon enough, a couple boys came over to her. They were all praising her and giving her gifts, such as watermelon juice and seashells. She ignored them and turned to look at a group of people playing QI ball off to the side. Beach bums were playing. "Ty Lee, come over right away." Zuko got out of his chair and quickly undid his robe, causing the birds in the area to fly behind him and his hair to blow in the breeze. A couple girls laughed at it since it gave off a really badass impression. Naruto said, "Show off," and he followed Azula. Standing aside, Naruto observed what Azula, Mai, Ty Lee, and Zuko were arranging. Azula's delivery of it gave the impression that it was a battle strategy. It was sweet and humorous. The other side had no chance at all, and Azula's final move even produced a tiny mushroom cloud. Azula exclaimed, a smirk on her face, "Yes, we vanquished you for all eternity. You will never rise from the ashes of your shame and disgrace." Well, it was enjoyable, and then everything returned to normal. 2 boys came up to the crowd. "We're throwing a party at my place later. You should stop by with your friend," said the lad with the top knot. Ty Lee said joyfully, "Oh, I adore parties," as Mai just gave the 2 a blank look. Naruto approached the youngster and asked, "Aren't you going to invite us too?" The rest is done for him by his flaming eyes. The boys now known as Chan walked out with his companion, Ruon Jian. Sure, just try and seem normal. Some of the most important teens are going to be there, so be on your best behavior," Azula responded, her smile resurfacing as Naruto grinned as well. For dinner, they went back to Lo and Lai's house. They sat down as soon as the supper was prepared. Zuko asked while eating into a chunk of steak, "Why didn't you inform those folks who we were?" Azula began, "I guess I was curious. I'm so used to people worshipping us." Ty Lee enthusiastically exclaimed, "They should. Yes, I am aware of it and I adore it. But this time I was curious to see how people would react to us if they were unfamiliar with who we were." Lo said, "Ember Island gives you a clean slate." But Lai continued, like waves washing the tracks on the sand. Strangely, Naruto was the one who spoke next before the other 2. Naruto, Lo, and Lai got up from the table and did a coordinated clapping, dancing thing before raising their fists in the air. The 3 exclaimed happily, "To the party." Except for Lo and Lai, everyone regarded Naruto curiously. Naruto responded, shrugging his shoulders and explaining that it was an age thing. Break. When a raven eagle caught up with the messenger hawk and stole the message, the hawk was still flying across the landscape. The combustion man, a hired assassin, immediately picked it up and destroyed the note after reading it. Party. Chan answered the wooden door when Azula knocked on it. He turned to face the group and said, "You're a little early. Nobody is even present yet, I suppose." As she stared at the lowering sun, Azula murmured, "You said we would be partying from dark till dawn." "That was only figurative language," Naruto replied before whispering in Chan's ear. "Besides, what's the harm in having 3 hot babes in your house? We are the best party attendees because we arrive precisely on time." Chan pondered that before responding. "I admire your style of thinking. 1. Come in." Azula tried to compliment him on his attire as he was about to leave, but he cut her off, saying, "Okay, here's the deal. My father's an admiral in the Fire Nation and he doesn't know anything about me throwing a party. So don't mess things up. Sharp outfit, Chan. Be careful, because it's so sharp. You might pierce the hull of an Empire-class Fire Nation battleship, causing thousands of people to perish at sea." After pausing, Chan said, "Oh, thanks." Before Naruto intervened, Azula pouted at the response, saying, "You should have said making the ship explode, killing everyone instantaneously, and leaving no survivors." "Really?" Azula questioned as she turned to face Naruto, who was donning an orange version of Zuko's outfit. After that, the party quickly picked up. People began chatting, laughing, and flirting, much like the lads were doing to Ty Lee, who was now encircled. "How did you come to know Ty Lee?" "I ran into her at the beach today, and she seemed very taken with the gift I gave her. I actually met her first." They all turned to stare at Ty Lee as a third boy spoke. "I don't care who I met first, so look, because I like everyone." "Yeah, but what about you?" Naruto was currently mixing with a few people, and it appeared like he was fairly popular since everyone was smiling and listening to his jokes. Her reply was knocking all of them unconscious as she withdrew back to Azula's side, who was alone. "I'm pleased you're here, Azula. They won't leave me alone, those boys. They must all think I'm too attractive." Ty Lee was challenged. "You can't be this stupid. What are you discussing?" she remarked, pouting at Azula. "Only because you make things simple for them do those boys like you. You are a tease, not a challenge." Azula crossed her arms and looked to where Naruto was, but she turned back when Ty Lee started crying, saying, "It's not like they genuinely care who you are." "All right, cool down. What I said wasn't what I meant." Azula looked around the room before saying, "Jealous. Look, maybe I just said it because I was feeling," she added. "What? Are you envious of me? But you're the world's most stunning, intelligent, and wonderful girl. You're true about all of those things, but when I meet boys, for some reason, they seem to act as though I'm about to do something terrible to them." Azula's words made Ty Lee chuckle, and she then retorted, "But you probably would do something nasty to them. They're probably simply intimidated by you, so just look at him, smile a lot, and laugh at everything he says, even if it's not humorous, to win over a boy's affection." She grinned warmly at Azula. "Well, that seems incredibly naive and foolish, but let's give it a shot." A grinning Azula said, "Okay, there are sugar cakes," Ty Lee said after clearing her throat. "How is this party going for you?" Azula laughed, and everyone turned to hear her. Mai, who was seated next to Zuko on the couch, said, "I'm bored." Zuko remarked while gazing up at the roof. "I know," she said, looking down at the ground. "I'm hungry." "Well, what?" So, Zuko got to his feet and went in search of Mai's supper. Sure, in order to put what Ty Lee had taught her to the test, Azula took Naruto away from the gathering and said, "Naruto, I'm ready for a tour of the house." "But Azula, I don't reside here." His response was immediately altered by an indignant grimace. "Oh, yeah, definitely," he moaned, keeping his head down. "I usually like going on excursions and everything." When they arrived at a balcony with a view of the water, Naruto asked, "So Azula, come here often?" "Every summer. My family and I used to visit this place. We formerly owned a beach property not far from her, but that was in the distant past." "Well, it's a wonderful place. Too much sand for my taste though." Azula chuckled at Naruto's remark. Naruto joined in and smiled at Azula before stroking a stray hair from her cheek. Azula then unexpectedly moved in for a kiss, catching Naruto off guard. A short while afterwards, she drew back and declared, "You and I shall make the world's strongest pair together. We will rule the earth," she declared as she straightened up and raised both palms, igniting blue flames in the process. After a moment of being perplexed, Naruto grinned at Azula and said, "And I'll be with you every step of the way, I guess," while holding Azula's hands and dousing the flames. This time, Naruto kissed Azula more passionately. When they heard Chan shout, Who destroyed my Nana's vase? The moment was spoiled. When Zuko was thrown into the vase, Ruan Giant pointed at him and said, I think you should leave. Don't worry, I just started. He stormed out of the room and shut the door behind him. Sighing, Naruto said, Don't worry, Azula. I'll follow him, as he turned to face the entrance. Meanwhile, guys, I know this is going to sound insane, but I think a metal guy is heading our way. Toph startled everyone up with a start. What? All of them looked up and saw a man peering down on them, his metallic arm and leg reflecting the moon's light. He took a deep breath in and let out his abilities, interrupting Ong, who was being blinded by the light. Beach. As Zuko climbed the steps, he saw a family portrait and a set of handprints on the cement, one of which was his and the other belonging to Azula. Everything he looked at was giving him flashbacks of when he and his family were still close and happy. Nice spot, Zuko, he said, turning to face Naruto, who was resting on the stair railing with an unreadable emotionless expression, and Azula, who was standing behind him. She put her hands on her hips and replied, Thought I'd find you here, before wiping his hair away from his face. Zuko smiled sadly and said, Those summers we spent here feel like such a long time ago. So much has changed. Come down to the beach with us. Come on. This place is depressing, Azula said to the two boys as they followed her down to the beach, where they met up with the others. As Zuko passed Mai, she said hey, and as Zuko turned to ask where her new boyfriend was, Naruto put a hand on his shoulder and just shook his head. Zuko sighed and sat next to Mai. Do you feel cold? Mai nodded and offered him a little grin as he put his hand around her shoulder. I'm very freezing. Ty Lee embraced herself and said, I will start a fire. Zuko pointed to the abandoned home and asked Naruto, Can you help me out? There are a lot of stuff to burn in there. No one saw, but if they had merely paid attention, they would have seen Azula and Naruto holding hands as Naruto rose from beside her. The combustion man kept blasting them with blasts, so the group was now cowering behind a big boulder. This is absurd. How can we defeat a man who blows things up with his mind? Yelled Sokka as he shielded his ears from yet another explosion. We can. Come on, Appa, I'll attempt to divert your attention. Ong then sped out into the haze. The combustion man was eventually carried into a space filled with rock columns, his hands clanging and feet clattering. Ong hid behind a column, breathing heavily. He peered out of his cover just in time for the assassin to notice him. He unleashed a barrage of explosions, but Ong kept dodging them by swerving from pillar to pillar. The assassin looked around in the smoke, but he couldn't see Ong anywhere. He passed by a pillar and stopped. He looked back, and a pair of eyes were staring at him from within the... That was random, Toph remarked, his eyes fixed on nothing. As they all turned to face Katara, she stated, I don't think so. I have a feeling that guy knew who we were. Beach. Zuko threw the painting of his family into the fire, and Ty Lee saw that various pieces of furniture from the house were shattered into bits to make some kindling. Why are you doing that? What do I appear to be doing? But the picture of your family was a painting. You think I'm interested? Zuko retorted, crossing his arms. In a quiet voice, Ty Lee said, I believe you do. Since you don't know me, please keep to yourself. He turned to go when he overheard Ty Lee whisper, I am aware of you. No, you don't, he said, turning around and waving his hand in front of him. You're confined to your own tiny Ty Lee world, where everything is constantly wonderful. Mai argued. Zuko, let her alone. Walking close to the lake, Zuko mimicked Ty Lee by exclaiming, Look at me, I'm so gorgeous. On my hands, I can stand up. After seeing Ty enraged Lee's expression, he stood on his hands and yelled, Circus freak. Azula began to cry at the rims of her eyes as she spoke, and Naruto pulled her closer to him to stop her from laughing. I am a circus freak, yes, laugh as much as you want. You're curious as to why I joined the circus, Azula said. Here we go, so that only Naruto could hear her. Do you know what my entire life was like? Having 6 identical sisters when I was a child. It was like not even having my own name, Ty Lee said as she got up from her seat. I joined the circus because I was terrified of living the rest of my life as a match set, she said, falling to her knees and sobbing. At least I stand out now. Ty Lee was surprised when Naruto unexpectedly gave her a hug, which helped her feel a little better. Ty Lee, it's all right. He grinned at her and assisted her in sitting down. We know who you are and we won't look at you as part of a matched pair. Circus freak is a compliment, too. Zuko, who was still lying on the ground, was yelled at by Naruto. Ty Lee became enraged once again when Mai remarked aloud, I guess that's why you need 10 boyfriends too. Excuse me, what? Naruto rolled back hilariously to Azula's side, who was laughing at his suffering. Ty Lee stated, sitting up on her knees and accidentally slapping him square on the chin. Attention problems. You're attempting to make up for not receiving any attention as a child today. Hey Azula, do you feel like things are going out of control? Naruto questioned, but Azula was focused on the conflict. Well, what is your defense? For 15 years you were raised as an only child. However, despite all of the attention, your aura is still this stingy, pasty gray. I don't think in auras. Mai cut in as she turned to face Zuko, who had just gotten up from his seat. Zuko remarked, his hands balled into fists on his side. Yeah, you don't believe in anything. Azula responded after hearing Mai's response, as long as it doesn't include us Naruto. Then yeah, it hasn't gotten out of hand yet. I'm sorry I can't be as hysterical and insane as the rest of you, but oh well, I apologize. Instead of holding all of your emotions inside, I wish you could occasionally be erratic and hyper. She just termed your aura stingy, Zuko said as he glanced at his hands. Will you accept that? This time, Zuko pointed at Ty Lee as he said, what do you want from me? Mai just chose to ask as she sat down on the rock. You want me to break down and confess how difficult my upbringing was. It wasn't, though. Being the only wealthy child, I had access to everything. I could speak if I behaved, sat still, and waited to be spoken to. My mom advised me to avoid getting into trouble. We had to consider my dad's political career. Well then, that's it. Azula entered the conversation with her arms folded in front of her. And if you strayed from them you were shot down. You had a demanding mother who had specific expectations. You're terrified to care about anything, which prevents you from speaking your mind. You want me to express myself. Give me some space. Mai tightened her palms into fists as Azula regarded her with disdain. Zuko tried to grab Mai and say, I enjoy it when you express yourself, but he was smacked away. Don't get near me. You still have my ire. When Mai overheard Naruto laughing, she attacked him. And Naruto, how are you doing? What was it like growing up? Oh, you want to know about my life? Right. They were all drenched in negative light and glanced at Naruto as he cleared his throat. They didn't know why, but everyone felt a shudder run down their spine. Naruto muttered as he stood up. He swept his hands over the fire, turning it dark. Actually, I was an orphan. A demon killed both of my parents. My early years were enjoyable. I frequently had to search among my village trash in search of a nutritious meal. I was frequently pursued by the villagers, who eventually battered me. You see, my father killed the monster that also killed him and my mother on the day I was born. When my father passed away, there were bitter feelings because he was our village hero and leader. The flames abruptly reverted back to its previous hue. I really liked the day I informed them I was the son of Minato Namikaze, the fourth leader and hero of my town. They thought I was some sort of reincarnation of that horrible monster and made my life hell. He stared at his hands, then up to his friends. You should always remember that someone probably has it out worse. The looks on their faces when I killed all of them were priceless. Like on my 9th birthday, when the locals beat me with rods and swords in the major plaza. Then they burned me to death, and after that, I honestly don't recall what happened. When your brain shrivels up, you often forget things. After that, everyone became silent as they compared their own lives to Naruto's and concluded that nothing was as miserable as his. Ty Lee said, looking kindly at Naruto, who appeared to be deep in meditation. I think everyone should calm down now. This much negative energy is harmful for your skin. You'll completely come out. Poor skin. Normal adolescent worries about their skin. I don't have that type of luxury, snapped Zuko, glaring angrily at Ty Lee. My father made the decision to permanently mark my face with a lesson. He indicated his scar. I'm sorry, Zuko. For so long, I believed that my dad's acceptance would make me happy. He laughed and continued, my dad talks to me now that I'm back home. And he thinks I'm a hero, right? Everything need to be flawless. Now, I should be joyful. I'm not, though. I have never been furious, and I have no idea why. You should respond to this straightforward question then. Whom are you upset with? Do you want to sit close to me? Azula asked, putting a hand on Naruto's shoulders. Nobody, I'm just mad with you. Yes, with whom are you upset? Zuko. Mai inquired. Everyone. I have no idea. Zuko mockingly clenched his head in pain. Is that Dad? Azula questioned. Your uncle? Inquired Ty Lee. Me? Questioned Azula. No, Zuko replied. So, whom are you upset with? Answer Zuko's inquiry. Speak to us. I'm furious with myself, because I no longer know the difference between good and wrong. Zuko punched his fists into the air. causing the fireplace to burst into flames. Azula scolded Zuko, who was now looking out into the water. Zuko and Mai exchanged smiles before Zuko paused when he saw Azula cheering. "I know one thing I care about," Mai remarked, approaching Zuko from behind and hugging him. Everyone gave a fantastic performance, almost breaking down in tears due to Zuko's acting. Zuko put an arm over Mai, who did the same, saying, "Yeah, you wouldn't understand, would you, Azula? Because you're so perfect." "Yes, I suppose you're correct. I'm not as emotional as the rest of you," Naruto answered with a smile that nothing had happened. "I wasn't going with sob story. I was actually going with terror." Everyone looked at Azula, who was gazing at the glowing embers of the dying fire. She was right, of course, but it still hurt, Azula said, grinning at his humor before adding, "I can sit here and explain about how our mom liked Zuko more than me, but I don't really care. My own mother thought I was a monster." Lo and Lai's predictions came true. We did discover something about ourselves on the beach. I feel totally polished. I'll never forget this, Ty Lee murmured as he picked up a pebble and massaged it with her fingers. Everyone but Naruto, who was gazing off into the distance at the sea, nodded in agreement with her assertion. "Naruto," Zuko inquired, "is it just me, or does that island seem to be moving?" Guys, everyone stared and could indeed see the small island across from them moving. Slowly but surely, as Naruto stated out of the blue as he pointed it out. "That's strange," Ty Lee remarked. "You know what will really make this trip special?" Azula moved up behind Naruto, who was still gazing at the shifting island, and he asked. The last thing they saw was Chan's wailing form inside his destroyed home, and they all returned to Chan's house and began ransacking it 1 month later. They were too far away to jump across to, but Azula never let that stop her. She stared at the gondola where her brother Zuko, along with Sokka, Hakoda, and 2 other inmates she didn't know, were being held. She said, "Naruto," as Naruto hastily pulled out a well-known tri-kunai. "I advise you all to cling onto me." Ty Lee and Azula both clung to Naruto's armor. "Hello, no jutsu." They reappeared on top of the gondola in a streak of gold and black when Naruto threw the kunai hard enough to pierce the ceiling. "How'd they manage that?" exclaimed Sokka as he, Zuko, and Suki reached the summit. "I've been yearning for a rematch, and here it comes." Zuko was fighting blows with Azula and Naruto was engaging Sokka in a stare-off as Suki unleashed a punch at Ty Lee, who just managed to avoid it. Sokka began to speak while waving his weapon. "Well, aren't you going to attack?" "Well, you see, there is the issue. You might just die or something if I assault. It's fairly clear that you're not a bender, and I am. Therefore, I won't assault you. So what are we going to do?" Assuming that the man was telling the truth, Sokka put down his sword. "First off, I'm Azula's bodyguard and boyfriend. My name is Naruto." Strange, really. If both of them had met under different circumstances, they would probably be buddies because 2 fools always get along with one another. "I'm Sokka and that's my girlfriend Suki," he said, pointing to the female who was fighting with Ty Lee. "Dude, do you ever realize how drawn to strong women we are? Explain it to me." "Naruto, we're come to take these idiots down, not be polite and make small talk." Azula quickly threw a blue ball at Zuko after jumping out of his fireball. "Right on cue." "Sokka, I suppose we'd get along well if we weren't trying to murder each other," Naruto stated before assuming a modified taijutsu stance, the sole change being that his hands were now clenched into fists, and his posture was straight. They were about to engage in combat when the gondola abruptly halted, indicating that the warden had managed to free himself from his restraints. "I got that feeling too," Sokka stated before drawing his sword. "Clear the space," before Chit sang. A prisoner who was traveling with the group during their escape dragged him back into the still gondola. He yelled, "The warden won't live if we cut the cables." Another guard lifted the huge saw onto one of the metal lines and remarked, "He knows that. The wires are being cut. What are we going to do, Azula?" The moment they felt the entire gondola shake, the fighting halted. Asked Ty Lee, "Bye-bye Zuzu, we're leaving." Naruto gazed at Zuko for a bit before adding, and with that, she launched herself to the oncoming gondola along with Ty Lee. "Zuko, it seems like you've finally found your way." Naruto grinned as he made his way to the gondola's edge. "I did, indeed." "Naruto, how about you? Don't you realize you're going in the wrong direction?" Naruto laughed in response and jumped up next to Azula. "Zuko, I'm sorry. However, I forged my own way." He gave the group a wave before turning to Azula, who was only now sporting a frown. She gazed at Naruto before pointing at the prison. Naruto followed her finger and observed Mai successfully reactivating the other gondola while fending off a bunch of guards. Soon after starting to move, the The second gondola was on the opposite side of the lake. What the hell is that moron thinking? Azula got from the gondola and approached Mai, who was being restrained by two soldiers. Why? Azula asked, her face a mixture of pity and rage. She seized Mai's clothing from the front and lifted her about 2 feet into the air. You must not know people as well as you believe, Azula. You estimated wrong. I cherish Zuko more than I cherish you. Azula clenched her hand in rage and flung Mai to the ground hard. No, Mai, you miscalculated. I should have made you more afraid. Before anyone could murder each other, Ty Lee rushed quickly enough to strike Azula, blocking her Kai and crippling her. Azula started the correct steps to make her lightning, and Mai drew out one of her knives. As Ty Lee stepped forward to assist Mai in standing up, Azula slumped to the ground. Come on, we must leave immediately. Before they could run, Naruto, who was wearing a confused and dejected expression, placed a hand on each of their shoulders. He channeled lightning through his body into Mai and Ty Lee, knocking them both out instantaneously. And the guards carried the two unconscious women and began to walk to the infirmary, saying, "Forgive me for this. Put them in a location where I won't have to look at their faces for a while. I don't care if they go to waste." Naruto approached her and with just a few fast hits to some of her pressure points revived her powers and her mobility. Azula stated as she was lifted up by two guards. And Naruto, how are you doing? Will you also turn on me? With his heart burdened, Naruto turned to face the ground. He clenched his hands into fists and said, "No, Azula, I love you too much to even think about it." What should he do? Mai and Ty Lee were his friends, but so was Azula. Did he even have a choice? Azula raised his head up with her fingers so that he could gaze squarely at her, saying, "Good, because if you are going to betray me, then I would murder you personally." Azula may have appeared serious on the outside, but she was actually torn up inside. Would she really be able to kill Naruto? Of all the people she knew, Naruto was the only one who had ever truly loved her, and she had reciprocated that love in equal measure. But what would happen if Naruto betrayed her? Could she handle it? You have nothing to worry about, princess. My loyalty is only yours. Come on, we must leave. Azula needed to think of something else to take her mind off the troubling ideas that kept popping into her head. If her brother weren't such an idiot, he probably would have taken her airship. Meanwhile, Katara and Aang greeted Sokka and Zuko as they arrived at the Western Air Temple with their companions and a new airship, courtesy of Princess Azula. Wow, it must have been a really successful fishing excursion. How did the ship fare? Aang questioned as he observed the significantly bigger and more robust ship. It kind of blew out, said Sokka apologetically. But we got gifts for you. Is that meat? Toph, who had just appeared behind Katara, asked. Yes, Toph. Friendship and family are the best kinds of meat. Suki and the rest of the group emerged from the ship as if on cue. Dad. That night everyone was happier than usual. A family had been restored, and Katara shouted excitedly, hugging her father. However, it wouldn't last. By tomorrow they would be at the Western Air Temple and they would corner the Avatar and his friends. Azula gazed at the doorway where Naruto stood. His features, an unreadable mask. She could see the shape of the temple from her bedroom window. Azula was more hurt by Mai and Tai treacheries because they were her first friends and likely her only friends. But even so, their acts caused her to begin to distrust everything. Azula believed that if she turned her back on anyone, they would knife her. No, Azula felt his arms wrap around her waist as Naruto planted a light kiss on her left cheek, kissing her in return. But she shouldn't start thinking like that. She knew for a fact that Naruto would never betray her. Right. As he gave Azula another passionate kiss, Naruto said, "I love you," in her ear. Azula responded, pushing him to a chair nearby and sitting on his lap in an awkward position. Azula gave him another kiss while stroking his golden hair, saying, "I adore you," she yelled, again, as if hearing those 3 words would eliminate all the doubt she was harboring. Azula, I shall always love you. It was funny really. Seeing Naruto so submissive made Azula feel so powerful. She pulled his hair painfully back as she deepened the kiss, her other hand now holding Naruto by the throat. Azula grinned as she pulled him into a more passionate kiss, forcing open his mouth so that she could slip in her tongue. Nothing will be able to separate me from you. Naruto, you are mine. Azula walked away from a confused Naruto before she realized it would go any farther and said, "Get some rest." Within a few hours, we'll arrive at the temples. Aang stretched out on Appa and yawned, his air-bending arrows clearly visible in the early morning sun. He stood up and scratched his head before his focus was drawn to the chirping of birds at the fountain. He smiled at the scenery before a reflected light caused him to tilt his head to the left. The object bounced off harmlessly on Appa and noisily landed on the floor, causing everyone to awaken. "What is that?" Sokka took a moment to examine it before passing it to his father, and soon the object reached Zuko, who was still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He gazed down at the thing and paled, said on aloud as he handed it to the group, "Oh no, it had 3 kunais." A shout resounded throughout the cliffs as though the ghosts could sense his horror. "Jutsuhiraishin no." The group was momentarily blinded by a flash of yellow and red when Naruto appeared in front of them, Azula standing by his side and grinning viciously. "Good morning to all of you. Have a good night's sleep," Naruto said loudly as he mock saluted. "Oh, so this is the Avatar." He turned to face the group and noticed Ong. "Azula, why are you in this place?" Zuko took a position in front of the group and gradually assumed a combat posture. "Is it not clear? I'm going to enjoy growing up alone." She charged towards Zuko while hurling blue flames in his direction. "Zuko!" Ong yelled as he attempted to sprint in his direction, but he was halted when Naruto raised both palms in a stop sign. "I honestly expected that the Avatar would be older than this," Naruto stated casually as he aimed something at the group, which Ong grabbed in midair and recognized as another Tri-Kunai. "Wrong move, Avatar." The others didn't fare much better with him as he unleashed a flurry of strikes that left everyone on the ground. At one point he was 10 feet away and in the flash of an eye, Naruto delivered a tremendous right hook at Ong, sending him flying to the opposite side of the room. Earthbender Naruto's anger returned and his one-tailed state quickly surfaced. He began sprinting towards Toph, who was raising blocks of earth to try and stop him. But Naruto just kept dodging or jumping over them as he went down on all fours. Toph was the first to get up and create a rock pillar that sent Naruto flying. Toph quickly readjusted in midair and landed in a crouch. "Stop." Naruto didn't stop until he was directly in front of Toph. Katara used the water from the fountain to create a wave and encase him in ice, but his cloak just melted it almost instantly. He raised his claws and was about to strike down Toph when his body stopped moving. He looked over his shoulder and saw Katara. She was blood-bending. "Don't bother her." Katara made him kneel by using blood-bending. "You believe you can manage me?" A chakra-powered claw erupted from his cloak and shot quickly toward Katara. "No." The chakra arm was instantly cancelled by Toph's quick creation of an earthen dome that surrounded Naruto. "What in the world is this guy?" The dome made a low grumbling sound before shattering under the sonic boom of Naruto's roar. "I won't let anything stop me. Not again." The entire temple rocked as he slammed both palms to the earth. Zuko was dodging his sister's flames while firing another one at her, which caused both of them to stumble and fall off the ship. In the meantime, Azula and Zuko's fight was taking place on top of the various airships that were dropping bombs on the temple. When Appa swooped down and harmlessly caught Zuko as they fell, he said to Azula, who was still falling, as he turned to face him, "She won't survive, I say." Naruto suddenly materialized behind her and vanished in a flurry of light. "Of course she was," Zuko said after noticing how unappealing his butt appeared. Ong had a black eye, while the others had other scrapes and bruises. "Perhaps I should tell you who the man was." If only the thing tucked inside Sokka's belt was visible to the others. Things were very different when they arrived at Azula's flagship. Azula was once more atop Naruto, but this time, both of them were still wearing their armor. Her fingers were entangled in his hair, and her other hands were wrapped around his neck, their fingernails digging into his skin. Azula kept kissing him, as if her actions would keep him by her side forever. She didn't want to lose him because the actions of both of her friends were still gnawing. Naruto made a commitment that day that nothing will ever hurt Azula or cause her to feel this way again because he could see the concerned expression in her eyes. Additionally, Uzumaki Naruto never broke his word.
This was it for today. I will continue the story in next part, so stay tuned. Till then, we weeb offline.